hear that?
Yep.
It means we're officially being recorded, Cary.
Well, I like to
Full
be official.
disclosure. Full disclosure. We are being recorded.
All right.
First of all, Cary, it's so awesome to have you back. For anyone who is new to Don't Sweat It Alone, Cary's been one of my favorite people to have on, and he is one of the top health and fitness consultants that there is, along with being a health broadcaster. I completely value Cary's opinion. You have taught me so much, and I am so beyond grateful for all of that. And it's incredible to have you back.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the fact that you did have me back, and I'm looking forward to the interview as well.
Yes. I am excited because I was like, I remember like the other day I was like, Cary, what do we actually want to talk about today? Like, what is one of the most, I think what is one of the most topical things that we could discuss in my mind, and you nailed it on you took the hammer and literally just nailed it right on there. When you recommended, healthy eating habits to kind of have a strong immune system against COVID, I guess, right? I mean, is that the best way to say it?
Well, let's put it this way, that COVID has sparked a lot of research into nutrients that can affect the body's immune system. Obviously, we've been working on different types of preventative activities like wearing your mask, social distancing, those kinds of things. But as the research has evolved and we've seen who gets affected with COVID the most, it's pretty obvious that the deficiencies of vitamins and minerals and different substances play a big role in whether or not you get COVID and how quickly you can recover if you do get it.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. So with that being said, what do you recommend people are putting in their diets? And should we get this in supplementary ways? Is it through straight whole foods that we should be eating? And when I say whole foods, you know what I mean? You know what I mean, but does anybody else know what I mean at this point? Whole real foods, not any sort of modifications.
Well, look, if we were all doing that in the beginning, then probably it would have been different. Then we wouldn't have the deficiencies that we're now looking at as far as, a greater risk for COVID. So that doesn't happen, however. That doesn't happen. It hasn't happened. And if you look at kind of the symptoms of what happens to people who gets COVID, they have a term called comorbidities. And we do know, for example, that people who are obese are much greater risk of having COVID, much greater risk of having severe COVID, much greater risk of dying. People with diabetes, people with blood pressure issues, heart issues, all the different kinds of things that affect us make it more difficult again for people to avoid and or recover from COVID. So when you look at people who get COVID, it's kind of interesting. And if they can't discover any comorbidity, in other words, for some reason, a healthy person got COVID, the number of people who get COVID who don't have any other symptoms is relatively small. And the numbers that die without any of those other symptoms is also very small. That's, scant reassurance to people who unfortunately do have that particular occurrence. But it does tell you that if you stay healthy, yes, you could get it. And most people, Jenna, are what they call asymptomatic to begin with. That is, they may have it, not even know they have it. So again, something's going on in their system that allows them to kind of function even with the virus. But here's a couple of things that, again, have really stood out loud and clear. First one, vitamin D. Vitamin D, unfortunately, if you look at Wikipedia, 1 billion people in the world are vitamin D deficient. 1 billion. And this includes people who live in areas where there's sun, which is, again, the traditional way that humans develop vitamin D. The vitamin D the sun shines on your skin, different reactions take place, and eventually doesn't produce vitamin D right away, but eventually it does go
Can I
through the
tell you
process.
something, Cary?
Yes.
These wrinkles were earned from vitamin D.
Vitamin D. Well, it doesn't account for the fact that perhaps you got too much. or you
Touche.
stayed in the sun
Touche.
too long. Now remember, this is interesting from an anthropological standpoint. One of the reasons they think that after we moved out of Africa, where humans originated, and why we have lighter skin is because we moved into areas with different sun exposure than what we had developed with originally. And you develop the lighter skin so that you could be more efficient at converting vitamin D sunshine into vitamin D. And again, well, you're much more. You develop more vitamin D. Here's the problem too. African Americans have the highest rate of vitamin D deficiency in the country. And it seems to be part of the reason why they are at the greatest risk of developing COVID because of that vitamin D deficiency. Now, again, if you have dark skin because you have more melanin in the body, which protects you from D. Well, that was fine when you got 8, 10, 12 hours of sunshine a day. Now, if you live in cities like in the East, for example, where you don't have sun in the wintertime for the most part, or even if you do have sun, you're not making any vitamin D. Even here in Southern California right now, you get sun, you're not making much vitamin D at all. It has to be, you have to have a certain angle for the sun during the day to produce the UVA to get vitamin D. So if your shadow at noon, if your shadow is the same or shorter than you are, you're producing vitamin D. If you have a long shadow, you're not producing anything. You're still getting, nice sunshine, but you're not making vitamin D.
Wow.
The closer you get to the tropics, to the equator, the more vitamin D you make all year long. But you don't. That's why it's fat soluble, Jenna. I mean, it's stored in the body.
I don't even have an excuse to sit in the sun unless it's during those times.
Well, again, to make your vitamin D, I mean, that's why noon is the most productive time to produce vitamin D.
Yeah.
All right. But you're going to store it. And that's what, again, part of our evolution. You store it from what you get in the summertime to last through the winter when you're not getting much vitamin D to help you survive. But now, too many of us are vitamin D deficient. Too many are deficient. And the scientists have been arguing for years about how much you should have, but now it's kind of evident that if you don't have a level, at least when you take a blood test, between 30 and 80, you're going to be more susceptible to infections and immune challenges. And that's a key, Jenna, because it doesn't matter how much you take, it's how much ends up in your blood. So unless you take a blood test, you don't know if you have got enough vitamin D in your body.
Wow. And if someone isn't taking vitamin D and able to store it in their body through sunshine, right? But let's say a lot of people can't through the winter time, especially right now.
Right.
What are 3 foods you recommend that people could eat that do have vitamin D in them?
Well, for instance, it depends too on the animal, what they've done. But like chickens, if chickens are allowed to hunt, peck, and scratch and eat greens, they're going to have a higher level of vitamin D in the yolk, which tells you that just eating egg whites is stupid because you've got all the fat soluble vitamins in the egg yolk. So egg yolk will be a source. Liver, that wonderful food that all of us just love so much. Liver is the highest animal source of vitamin D.
I can't do it.
Most people can't, so you better supplement. Fatty fish in general. Fatty fish will be good. But so you take a supplement, right? And most of the time, they tried to scare the particular doo-doo out of all of us that we're going to get vitamin D toxicity if we take more than say 1,000 IUs a day, but that's pretty much nonsense. Most people
Oh,
could probably take between 1 and 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. And if you check your levels, you'll find that that's, you're going to be okay. If you're overweight or have a problem with digestion and assimilation,
yeah,
you're not going to absorb as much D. So a person who's overweight and or obese,
yeah.
they're not going to get the same level of vitamin D that you will, for example.
Right,
So
right.
getting a check, getting a
Wow.
simple blood test, taking your vitamin D
Okay.
during the day, getting a simple blood test would be fine.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
but they
great.
do know that if you'd have a vitamin D deficiency and get COVID, your chances of recovering are very low. Okay, very low. Now,
And
along
then,
with, I'm sorry, go
please,
ahead.
yeah. No, that's what I was going to say, along with.
Well, along with vitamin D, another nutrient that has emerged as being protective against COVID, not necessarily against getting COVID, but against having some of the side effects that deal with the lungs and blood vessels, is vitamin K, and specifically vitamin K2. A lot
Yes.
of vitamin D supplements will have vitamin K2 with it because vitamin D releases calcium into the bloodstream. Vitamin K as K2, you have two forms. You have K1, which you find in plants, green leafy vegetables and those kind of things. That's called phyloquinone, from phyllo, I guess, for plants. And then the menaquinone is the vitamin K2. Now that K2 is going to get that calcium, and it's going to do two things. It's going to keep it from being too dense, so it might accumulate in your arteries, which is what you don't want, obviously. It'll take it to the bone. So as a woman, for example, being more susceptible to osteoporosis as you age, vitamin K2 and vitamin D are really protective. Now,
Okay. Well, it's good to know.
K2
I
is,
take a daily supplement of K2 plus D. I think it's
I would
D3.
suggest that. I would suggest K2 and D3.
Yeah.
K2 is found mostly in animal foods and especially in fermented foods.
I
So
love fermented.
you'll find it in fermented foods. You'll find it in different animal foods. Cheese, believe it or not, can be a good source of
Really?
K2. It's measured in micrograms to give you an idea. That's a very tiny amount. 1,000 micrograms equal 1 milligram. So you're talking about 100, maybe 180, 200 micrograms of K2 a day. So it's not a lot. Now, the one thing
Wow.
I eat that I suspect most people I know don't eat, and most people would not want to eat.
Where are we going with this? What is it?
It's a Japanese fermented soy food called natto.
Oh, I don't even
N-A-
know it.
Natto. You'll find it in Japanese markets. And
What is it similar to? Like a kimchi?
oh no,
Because I love
natto.
me some kimchi.
I know I like kimchi too, but natto is. I got to be delicate here. Natto is a slimy soy food.
Oh no.
It's made by using a certain
Live
bacteria.
for natto, Cary. This is the lesson of the day.
I have natto
I'm just
every
kidding.
day, believe it or not. Natto
Get out.
is the highest food source of vitamin K2 on the planet. And it's
Now I have a question.
also, yeah,
Yeah. What are you gonna say? It's also what?
well, it's also a source of an enzyme called nattokinase, which digests, among other things, fibrin in the arteries and in the vessels. Fibrin is like this kind of like spider web type thing that can develop in there and impair circulation. So people
Oh wow.
in Japan that eat the most natto also have superior heart health. Okay. So it's a very good
Gotta go.
food. You
I
can
gotta
mix
go
it.
to the market, Cary. Immediately. I'm just kidding.
Well,
Sorry,
again, and
I'm signing off early.
if you learn how to use it, like if you mix it with beans or rice or some other kind of food, it's no big deal. They use it in Japan in the morning for breakfast. I think they mix it with miso and natto and some of the other things that they eat So it's okay, right? If you just eat it by itself and you've never done it before, you probably will say something very, very mean about me and throw it away. So I'm not
Why
gonna.
would you ever have this guy on? Yeah. I actually have a question because of that. Do you still take supplements, or do you get all of your nutrients from the foods you're eating?
No,
Because
no,
I
I
know.
take supplements.
Okay,
I've taken supplements for 50 years, for
okay.
God's sake.
Yeah, no,
Different
I
ones.
only asked because,
I go
you know,
through cycles.
some people are anti-supplement. Some people, don't think it's, I don't know why in particular, but I know some people are like, well, I'm just gonna eat food and I should be getting all my nutrients through that. I don't need to take supplements.
Well, good. Then test yourself.
Okay,
Prove
fair.
it.
That's a great
Prove
answer.
it. Go to a
Right.
good
Great
doctor who will
answer.
give you the kind of blood tests where you can really see what's in the body.
Yeah.
And you can find out, if you're doing it. You can get tested for everything. Just
Mhm.
depends on kind of the philosophy and the viewpoint of the doctor, what they decide to test for, but
Yeah.
I go to what they call functional
Hmm.
medicine doctor, and boy, they do a really, really complete testing for me. And you can see what's going on. You don't have to guess. The
Right.
other part is a nice philosophical ideal.
Mm.
Just eat the good food and you're going to get it. Well, another nutrient that's deficient in our diet, maybe 80% of the people are deficient in magnesium. And it
I've heard
turns
that.
out that magnesium also plays a role in vitamin D
Oh,
and
really?
and could influence COVID as well in terms of your susceptibility to COVID. So it's logical. Magnesium, vitamin D, they work together. And again, you look at the statistic. If 80% of the people might be deficient or not
Hmm.
getting enough magnesium, and it's
Yeah.
involved in over 300 enzymatic activities in the body, it's a very, very crucial
I
mineral.
mean, I
And
heard
because of
many.
the
Yeah.
soils are depleted. If we're not getting the nutrients, so you could be eating your food, like you say, but you're still not getting enough,
Yeah.
so it plays a role. Vitamin D and magnesium hand in hand. And also another nutrient that's involved with COVID that has been shown to be almost as important, not quite, but almost as important as vitamin D is zinc.
Yes. Yes.
Zinc's involved in immune function, but it also is antiviral. And so if you can, it's just like there are different zinc supplements people take when they have a cold, right? You take a lot of
Right.
zinc for 4 or 5 days and it helps shorten the duration of the cold. Well, colds are COVID varieties too. They're a type of COVID. So
Yeah.
if you can usher that zinc into the cell, it has antiviral properties. Now, one of the little clues here that the functional medicine people use is they take their zinc with something called quercetin.
Never heard
Quercetin
of
is
that.
uh, quercetin is you find it in onions, for example, in different
Okay.
types of foods. The
Hmm.
quercetin acts as a carrier to make sure that the zinc gets into the cell. So you might want to check out quercetin, Quercitin.
Okay.
One other thing that's been shown to be effective too for COVID is vitamin B1, thiamine, and also
Okay.
thiamine plays a role in blood sugar regulation. And we know again that people who have diabetes have a greater risk of COVID infection. And if you just look at this, what, 70, 60% at least of the population is overweight or obese.
Yeah,
So
it's
there's a
really.
comorbidity. You're looking at people who are more susceptible to
Yeah.
COVID. You're looking at maybe almost 50% of the population has diabetes. Again, another risk factor. So you put all this stuff together and you see, my goodness, no wonder we're so susceptible to this kind of thing. Now, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Truthfully, I will take the vaccine when it's available.
Yeah.
But but taking the vaccine is not going to do anything to remedy some of those deficiencies
It's a
that
great
you're
point.
that you're dealing with, right?
Great
So
point. I will, sorry, this is a totally different topic. But what you just said, I think, is so, so, so important, that people think because they can take a pill that helps with high cholesterol or high blood sugar, that they shouldn't need or should be doing the things that they should be doing naturally. And that was such a good point with, the vaccine. Like, you could still be deficient in vitamin D and vitamin K and zinc and magnesium, and just because you got the vaccine, you're ignoring the way that we should actually be treating our bodies. I just think that was such a great thing for you to just say, because it's so true.
Well, something else will manifest.
100%.
Those deficiencies are going to lead to something else. You may protect yourself from the COVID, but something else is going to be at risk. All right, because that's just the problem with a deficiency. That's what's going to happen. All right. And to that end, just a little brief kind of excursion here. There's one of the most prominent nutritional biochemists in the world is a guy named Dr. Bruce Ames. He's up in Northern California in the Oakland area, Oakland Children's Hospital, I believe. And he developed a theory called the triage theory. Triage is a medical term that was adopted by surgeons in the field of battle, meaning that when somebody came to you with an injury, they might have had multiple injuries, but you treat the one thing that you can treat immediately, even if that means something else is going to be a problem later on. You have to deal with what you see. His theory is that the body does that with nutrients. So let's say vitamin K, and this is actually where he did his research. Vitamin K, again, as we know, it's necessary for clotting. But we also know, again, it's necessary for taking the calcium to the arteries. It's necessary for immune function. But if you're vitamin K deficient, the body is only going to use what it has to help you survive that day. Your body is designed to help you sustain yourself. That's it. They're not looking at long term. They're not looking at 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. But those deficiencies accumulate, right? And then all of a sudden, the body has been left vulnerable. And then the saying being, well, all of a sudden, something happened. I just got it just now. Well, no, you didn't. You've been developing it because you have deficiencies that have not been treated. The body's used what it can for the moment, but it's no insurance policy for the future.
Wow.
So when you have people that say, "Oh, they just got sick all of a sudden," no. You have those deficiencies, and that goes back to what we're talking about with the different vitamins and minerals.
Right.
You may have averted something immediately, but down the road you're going to have to pay the price.
I will definitely be very honest here and call myself out. There was a point where I was getting sick a lot and easily, and it was definitely a period in my life where I was not taking supplements. And I was doing most of the things that I'm doing now. I just was not taking even, a multivitamin that I knew was giving me vitamins and nutrients that I needed, that I probably wasn't getting through the foods I was eating. And it really has made a difference.
Well, again, people are not dumb. I know that you always hear all these admonitions. Well, people don't really need supplements. They just need to eat well. And ask the person who tells you they just need to eat well. Well, what does that mean? And what are you getting? What are you getting in this particular food, that particular food? And what about food that's been grown in deficient soil or whatever? But you say just eat a balanced diet. Well, first of all, who's going to check? Who's going to check to see if you are? How many times have you ever gone to a doctor and they start off with a complete analysis of your body and your blood and what you've got before they recommend anything? Well, you don't have enough of this, or you have too much of that, or whatever. They don't do that.
No, they don't.
That's different than lip service. Now, and again, and I say this because it leads me into the next point I want to make. How do you know what you should eat? How do you know which plan is right for you?
Well, everyone's different, right?
Everyone is different, and that's part of it. It's also kind of science, and at the next time, it's kind of almost intuition, right? you've got to understand your own body, how you feel when you do certain things, how you don't feel, because just
Mm-hmm.
adopting a diet, there's wonderful things to be said about the keto diet for
Yeah.
different people. Autism, for
Yeah.
example, seems to be something that an autistic person seems to do very well on the keto diet. That there's also, plant-based diets. And contrary to what people think, just because you say plant-based doesn't mean you're a vegan. It just means for goodness sakes, the paleo diet is 65% plant-based. So
Yeah.
that's a plant-based diet too, and you look
Yeah.
at the Mediterranean diet, that's a plant-based diet. Of all the diets, for example, Mediterranean seems to be the one that hits the most people from the most angles, but
Yeah.
you never know. You never know. And the reason I'm
Not
saying
very
this
long
is,
ago, the longevity diet, Cary.
well, there's every name in the book. I mean, you can follow
Yeah.
whatever you want, but that doesn't mean that you fit into those categories. You
Mm-hmm.
might, you have to kind of be more aware. You have to develop that inner understanding, as it was, of who you should be. I say that because there was an interesting study where they looked at the body's ability to convert beta carotene into vitamin A. Beta carotene, you find it in plant foods, especially different colored foods like
Carrots,
red
right?
foods, green food. Carrots are a good source of beta carotene. What's supposed to happen is that when you eat those foods, the body gets the beta carotene, uses what it needs, and then converts the beta carotene into what's called provitamin A, like retinol, which is the preform, which very good for the immune system. Again, is critical for the immune system. Very good for the skin, incidentally,
Yeah.
too. As you
Anti-aging.
know, retinol can be used internally and externally
Mm-hmm.
to help the skin. But it turns out, again, not everybody converts beta carotene into vitamin A.
Wow.
There's an enzyme called beta carotene oxygenase. And if you
Uh-huh.
have enough of that enzyme, you can take that beta carotene, convert it into vitamin A. If you don't, that doesn't happen very well. You just have you might have high blood levels of beta carotene, but not of vitamin A. But what was
Right.
interesting is that the researcher said about 50% of the people don't have the sufficient enzyme, the beta carotene oxygenase, to make that conversion. So they recommended that people get their vitamin A from animal foods. So you can get it from, again, dairy products, full fat dairy products. You can get it from eggs. I mean, there's lots of sources of vitamin A in the animal kingdom because the animals have done that conversion. Well, all that says is, again, everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody's
Yeah.
different. So if you say, for example, only eat plant-based foods, don't eat any animal foods. Well, how do you know your body is getting the most out of just the beta carotene that we're talking about or anything else that's going on? How do you know you're absorbing everything? Unless you
Right.
either test it or just understand that you have to be more open-minded
Mm.
about the whole thing. So again, no one diet fits everybody. Maybe at one time on Earth when when we
Yeah.
didn't travel much and just ate the things in our own backyard, maybe that was different. But
I'm
now,
not going to go ahead and eat the things in my backyard right now, Cary. I'm going to tell you that would end badly.
well, especially if you have a dog, I don't think I'd eat everything in my backyard right now either, to be honest with you. So the term is called biochemic individuality.
Mm.
It was coined years ago by a nutritionist, and it just means that everybody is different.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of figure that out for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love it. I feel like I just got super smart because of you. We did have a few questions come in. I figured we could see if we could at least touch on one or two of them. Um,
That's okay.
yeah, we had a really good question come in that was, do you suggest juice cleanses for a reset? Um, for either, I actually had a friend ask me this the other day, ironically enough, if I would recommend a juice cleanse if they got COVID. to kind of reset the immune system. This person's asking if it's a reset from crappy food.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I would recommend it while the body's dealing with COVID.
Okay.
I think that might be a little, instead of saying juice fasting, for example, for cleansing, one of the biggest areas of exploration today for health is fasting. Not necessarily juice fasting, but different types of fast. Again, if you look at the logic of human evolution, 99% of the time we have been on this planet, we have had food insecurity. We did not know where our next meal was coming from. We did not have regularity of food like we do now, where you can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That was not part of human evolution. And that's why, part of the reason why our body can work on ketones, because, it had to be prepared to do different things at different times relative to what was coming in.
Yes.
You would fast more or less periodically because that was logic. You might have been able to get something to eat that one day and not for another day or 2 days or 3 days. So now they're finding that for resetting the body, fasting is probably a critical element. And it's, again, calorie restriction is part of the whole program of fasting. Intermittent fasting, which I think you do. I think you've talked about it. I know I've done it too, where you give the body a longer period of time where you don't eat relative to the food window. And again, that allows the body to go through a process where it actually helps to reuse different types of substances that should be eliminated from the body. Bench proteins, DNA that's not the way it should be. The body is going to systematically try to reuse things that aren't as important to its survival. Okay, so that's the type of normal cleansing. That's what should be going on. So juice fasting, again, and I know we have this fascination with somehow getting in there and supposedly clearing everything out of the bowel as if that suddenly is going to make you feel better.
Yeah.
The consensus is that that's probably not really going to happen that well like you want.
So what would you recommend as a reset for someone who's been eating really poorly or for someone who is just getting over, we'll say COVID in this instance, instead of a juice cleanse?
First of all, before I did anything else, I would get on a good diet.
Okay.
Why cleanse if you don't know what you're going to do after the cleanse?
Right.
Or haven't established those kind of habits already? Because what you're going to do is you're going to cleanse and you're probably going to go back to what you were doing before, and then you'll think you got to do it again. So get yourself on a good program. And then intermittent fasting, you can experiment with different things. The 16-8 is probably a good one to try. 8-hour eating window, 16-hour not. And if you have a hard time getting into that, move into it gradually, like maybe extend the time when you eat in the morning half an hour, extend the time when you quit by half an hour, go down until you finally get into that window.
Yeah.
For some women, especially different hormonal issues might make it difficult to start off with an 8-16 plan. And if you have diabetes or blood sugar issues, then you got to go slow. Because your body just has not adapted to that, although you will find that probably the best cure beside a good diet, along with a good diet for diabetes, would be some type of logical fasting routine.
Oh, wow.
So I would look into that. That seems to be not only the healthiest program, but the one thing that they think will probably allow you to maximize the years that you have left for you. We haven't really... The science are working on it. There's a lot of people working on really extending human life beyond your genetic potential.
Wow.
That's the real area that's going on now with so-called anti-aging. I mean, this is life advancing, and this is going way beyond. This is kind of genetic modification and all kinds of things to really give you that kind of a boost that humankind has not had before.
Wow. Okay, so maybe as opposed to a juice cleanse, try some intermittent fasting.
I would get into that first and just see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's also a question that was, what are some foods if someone is hitting if they're feeling sluggish? What are foods that you recommend to kind of give that extra boost of energy besides drinking a matcha or a coffee or something like that? Are there any foods or natural boosts to get through your day that you recommend? Maybe it's not a food, maybe it's a supplement.
Trying to think of foods per se. Chocolate.
Yeah, dark chocolate. Yeah.
Dark chocolate is one that would give you that little bit of a boost. And I have no problem though with coffee, for example, or tea.
Me neither. No, me neither. I mean, I'm a huge coffee and matcha drinker myself.
Yeah, you just got to drink it at the right times. Obviously, if you find out how late you can use it and still not interfere with your sleep. But gee, the research just keeps piling up about the beneficial effects of coffee, for example.
Can we talk about that on our next session? Can we dedicate some time to that? That would make me so happy.
Yeah, we can. I didn't drink coffee for most of my life because it didn't seem logical, that you should drink coffee for some reason. And then the research started coming in. And, I look at that stuff and I say, hey, it's time to change my mind. But I will say. That's why I
love having you on, because I feel like your input is always very open, real, and honest. And I think a lot of people have, because you do the research and you're open-minded to everything, when I think a lot of people are actually closed-minded and have their thoughts kind of set, and then they want to find arguments to back up their opinion, if that makes any sense at all.
Oh, yeah, it does. And that happens all the time. You get yourself in kind of a philosophical rut in a way. Right. Maybe you just aren't fit for the kind of things that you're doing, and you do need to look at other things. But I just wanted to tell you, though, the first time I drank coffee, after never having, my son Aaron, whom you know, and he's a big coffee guy, he took me to a place here in Pasadena, actually. I thought my heart was going to pound out of my chest. I thought, oh my God, how can this be good for you? It was something else. I thought, gee whiz, I was a real caffeine virgin. And man, oh man.
I want to talk about that then, because I am such a coffee fan, and I think that's a really interesting topic. And you and I have even spoken about coffee grounds before.
Yeah, I was using that. I kind of stopped doing it. It just didn't seem to be too much work for me. But coffee grounds have been shown to be effective for weight loss, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And it does have some other things in there that are good for you. And it makes sense. I also saw an article about the fact that, throughout history, we only eat certain things. This one kind of blew me away. In areas of the world where bananas are eaten a lot, most people eat the peels of the banana too. There's no reason why you can't eat a banana peel.
Wow.
Kind of blew me away.
Are there more nutrients in the peel than the actual banana? Because I know it's that way with like a potato.
Potato skins, some of them you can't, they're just too rough. Like an avocado skin, that doesn't really work too well. But some foods, I remember watching an anthropological show on chimpanzees, our closest genetic relative, and they were eating the banana, but they ate the whole doggone thing. And I was thinking, I wonder if there's something to that. And then I saw a little article and it said, yeah, it's possible to do that. Doesn't mean you have to. But when I eat an orange, for example, I pare the orange. I make sure I get the white pith, which is right next to the skin. That's very high in bioflavonoids. And I try to keep some of the skin. Now, that only works when you're using organic foods that haven't been sprayed. You obviously
Right.
don't want to eat a sprayed orange or a sprayed apple, in that
Right.
respect.
No.
So just make
Yeah,
sure you're getting the best food that way.
that makes
Okay,
sense.
but we'll put coffee on the agenda for next time.
Yes, I love that idea. Cary, thank you so much always for your time and your input and your wisdom. It's greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you. I
And
appreciate being with you. I do.
yeah, yeah, same here. And we're gonna plan another one. We're gonna put another one on the books, please, because especially I want to talk about coffee.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.